Everyone roll initiative, because it's time to play some Dungeons and Dragons. Hey everyone, I'm the DM of Titans, and welcome to another episode of D&D Nerdiness. This episode of Extra Tips and Tricks will be about ability scores, saving throws, and what they are. This video will also talk about how to use ability scores, how to roll saving throws, and that ability scores link to something that can aid a player with their rolls. So, let's get into it. Ability scores are crucial to the three main roles of the entire game. Ability checks, saving throws, and attack rolls all rely on the 6 abilities. They are also what guide a character's or monster's decisions in the game. They help decide whether you're better at a certain skill or not, if you're stronger than most, or a bit more of a chatterbox. That is what they were made for, to help work out a creature's strengths and weaknesses. They determine a character's or creature's capabilities, but also their limitations. For example, there is a character that a player played that was so strong that he could single-handedly lift an Indiana Jones sized boulder off another character who was being crushed by it. However, he had such a low intelligence that trying to read a simple sentence would burst a blood vessel in his forehead. Ability scores and the D20 are the biggest parts of the game. Without either of those things, it would be very difficult to play the game, to say the least. So now that we've discussed ability scores, let's talk about how they work on pen and paper. So there is a sheet of paper that helps a player create their character that is called a character sheet. On a character sheet, there are 6 copies of the following icon in a column. These icons are where you write down your ability scores. The 6 ability scores help describe a creature's attributes because they are divided into the following categories: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. But we'll talk about what each of those are later. For now, let's talk about how you decide which abilities are stronger than others. So, ability scores are numbered from 1 to 20, 1 being the lowest and 20 being the highest. However, an ability score can't be a 20 straight off the bat. You have to progress in the game to earn a 20 for an ability score. So, how do you decide the numbers of the 6 ability scores? Well, I'll explain that now. So, the first way you pick out your ability scores is by using the pre-made stats that are like a character's default settings, so to speak. These were created for the main purpose of not needing to worry too much on working out your ability scores. This definitely takes away the stress. However, this would make your character pretty average. So, with these ability scores, you have the following to choose from: 15, 14, 14, 12, 10, and 8. Depending on your character's class and how you want to play it out, you can choose what number goes with what ability. This type of selection can really aid in character development in whatever attribute you wish to empower. Next, you can choose the numbers of your ability scores by using a point buy system to both empower and limit your character. This is so you don't have to worry about the roll of the dice, but can still have unique ability scores for your character, instead of the pre-made stats. The way it works is you have a limited number of points to spend with, and each ability score has a different price to it. The higher the score, the more amount of points you'll spend. So, this is important. The maximum amount of points you can use is 27. You must remember that you have 6 abilities because, as you can see on the table, you don't need to spend any points for an ability score of 8. You need to spend 1 point for an ability score of 9, 2 points for an ability score of 10, 3 points for an ability score of 11, 4 points for an ability score of 12, 5 points for an ability score of 13, 7 points for an ability score of 14, and finally 9 points for an ability score of 15. You don't need to spend all of the points, but I'm sure you would want to. However, let me give you an example on how to spend your points responsibly. The final way of figuring out your ability scores is personally my favorite and the most hands-on method. Creating custom ability scores offers the most freedom and opportunity when it comes to making ability scores. So the way you do this is you get 4d6 or 6-sided dice and roll them. The lowest number you get, you remove. Then you add up the rest. And finally, write down what score you got. However, if you get 2 dice that have the lowest number, you re-roll all the dice until you only get 1 dice that has the lowest number. This way is the most random but can be the most rewarding. This is because the highest ability score you can get is an 18. Most people shy away from this method because of that reason, because they want to level up their character during gameplay and work up to an 18. However, in my opinion, you could work on your weaker scores and try and level out your character instead. Another reason people shy away is because, theoretically, the lowest ability score you can get is a 6 instead of an 8. However, the odds of that actually happening are slim to none. Once you have your numbers, there are 2 ways to write them into your ability scores. One way to do so is to specifically roll for a certain ability and stick with that number. Or you could write down all 6 numbers and choose which number goes into which ability. The first way is stricter and wackier, having to limit your character in ways you may not want. And the second option is more fluid and allows you to limit and strengthen your character in whatever way you wish. Now that we've talked about ability scores in detail, let's talk about where they go. This image that you have seen for quite a bit now is taken directly from a character sheet. As you can see, the little circle below the square is where the number you rolled or had chosen for your ability score goes. But I think you're wondering why it doesn't go in the big square. That is because that is where the ability score modifier goes. So now let's talk about modifiers and what they are. An ability score modifier is a bonus or minus to any dice roll associated with an ability. An ability score shows how well trained a character is to a certain ability, and the modifier demonstrates this with the dice rolls. Any sort of ability check you make always adds a modifier, and that modifier you use, based on your ability score, can be shown with this table. As you can see, anything above an ability score of 10 is a plus, and anything below is a minus. So if your modifier is a minus, you must take the modifier's number away from your dice roll, and add if it's a plus. If a table isn't accessible, just remember that you can take your ability score, minus it by 10, then divide it by 2, and round it down. That should equal your modifier. For example, if you roll a 17 and have a modifier of +4, the total roll would be 21. And if you rolled a 5 and had a modifier of -5, the total roll would be 0. Also, a natural 1 is still an automatic fail no matter how high the modifier is. Also, naturally, a player cannot go above an ability score of 20. Only monsters can go above 20. Now, before we continue with our regularly scheduled program, I'd like to talk about something that's off topic but still relevant. Every ability check, skill check, and saving throw is contradicted against a difficulty class. A difficulty class just represents how hard a task is and how high or low a player has to roll to make their check succeed. As you can see, the difficulty varies from being dead easy to being somewhat impossible. For example, if you want to spot a castle and the difficulty class is a 5, then all you need to do is look to your right. However, if the difficulty class is a 30, then the castle is on the moon. The reason a difficulty class of 30 is impossible is because usually characters can only roll up to a 25 with a natural 20. However, it can be done, it's just very, very hard to do. So now that we've talked about abilities in general, now let's talk about them more specifically, starting with strength. So, strength is all about physical power and athleticism. So, a strength ability check, or strength check, is about being able to break down a door, move a boulder, or even try and bend solid steel. It's all about how big your muscles are, really. When you make a strength saving throw, roll to try and oppose a force that would physically move or bind you. For example, if someone tried to link arms and grapple you, you would make a saving throw to see if you could break free or be grappled. Now let's talk about dexterity. So, dexterity is all about agility, reflexes, and balance. It's all about being nimble and quick on your feet. So, a dexterity ability check, or dexterity check, is about being able to sneak past a guard, walk through a narrow ledge, or wiggle free from chains. You could even jump from rooftop to rooftop, as long as you're agile. When you make a dexterity saving throw, roll to try and dodge out of harm's way. For example, if you trigger a pendulum based trap, you can make a saving throw to see if you can jump out the way or be hit by the trap. Next, we have Constitution. So, Constitution is all about stamina and health. It's about being strong on the inside and being hardy enough to endure most hazards. So, a Constitution ability check or Constitution check is about being able to run a marathon, win a drinking contest, or keep steady while being in intense pain. When you make a Constitution saving throw, roll to try and endure a disease, poison, or another type of hazard that saps vitality. The best example is trying not to be sick during a drinking competition. Nobody wants that. Now let's talk about intelligence. So, intelligence is all about memory and reason, not necessarily having a photographic memory, but having a sharp and keen mind. An intelligence ability check or intelligence check is about being able to recall a bit of lore, recognize a clue's significance, or decode an encrypted message. When you make an intelligence saving throw, roll to try and disbelieve certain illusions and resist certain mental assaults that could be refuted to logic, sharp memory, or both. That I don't believe needs an explanation. Now let's talk about wisdom. So, wisdom is all about perceptiveness and sheer willpower, the ability to get up after being beaten time and time again, as well as spotting the finest of details. So, a wisdom ability check, or wisdom check, is about being able to spot a hidden creature, sense someone is lying, or being able to spot a needle in a haystack. When you make a wisdom saving throw, roll to try and resist effects that charm, frighten, or otherwise assault your willpower. For example, if there's an entity that tries to mind control you into being their minion, make a saving throw to make sure you resist or you fall under the entity's effect. And finally, let's talk about charisma. So, charisma is all about social influence and confidence. It's about how chatty and charming you are. So, a charisma ability check or charisma check is about being able to persuade a creature to do something, cow a crowd, or lie to someone convincingly. When you make a charisma saving throw, Roll to try and withstand effects such as possession that would subsume your personality or hurl you to another plane of existence. For example, if a ghost tries to take over your body, make a saving throw to not be affected or become possessed. Also, remember that every ability check, skill check, and saving throw are rolled with a d20 or 20-sided dice. And this may confuse you, so I'll warn you in advance. Your ability score can also be affected by the race of your character. Let me explain. If your character is an elf, your dexterity score increases by 2, meaning if the score you rolled or chosen was a 14 for dexterity, it would now be a 16. So remember, when making a character, always remember the ability score increase for your chosen race. So I'm going to cut this video short so the video isn't too long. Plus, it's fun to leave you on a cliffhanger. So the next video will talk about skills and skill checks and possibly more. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped you a little bit more in your D&D adventure. So let's end things here and continue this next session. Take care.